Let me begin by addressing something many of us do without a second thought, something that feels harmless, convenient, even responsible. You cook a meal, you have leftovers, and later you reheat it. Simple, efficient, normal. But what if I told you that in some cases, that second round of heat is not just warming your food? It is quietly changing it in ways your body may not be prepared to handle. You see, food is not static. The moment it is cooked, its chemical structure begins to shift. Heat alters proteins, fats, and nutrients in very specific ways. The first time you cook a meal, your body is generally equipped to process those changes. But when that same food is cooled, stored, and then exposed to heat again, a second wave of transformation occurs. One that is far less predictable and, in certain cases, far more dangerous. What concerns me as a medical professional is not the act of reheating itself, but what repeated heating does on a microscopic level. When food is reheated, especially at high temperatures, certain compounds begin to degrade, others are newly formed. Some of these newly formed substances are not friendly to the human body. They can be irritating, toxic, and over time, potentially harmful at a cellular level. Now, you may not feel this immediately. There is no alarm bell that rings after a reheated meal, no sudden signal that tells you something is wrong. That is exactly what makes it dangerous. The effects are subtle. They accumulate quietly. And over time, repeated exposure to these altered compounds may contribute to inflammation, oxidative stress, and in more serious cases, an increased risk of chronic disease. Let me put it in a way that is very simple to understand. Imagine your food as a carefully built structure. The first time you cook it, you reshape that structure in a way that is still stable and usable. But each time you reheat it, you are weakening the integrity of that structure. You are breaking bonds, distorting forms, and in some cases, creating entirely new elements that were not originally there. Your body then has to deal with the consequences of that instability. Another issue that often goes unnoticed is how uneven reheating can be. Many people use microwaves or quick stovetop methods that do not distribute heat evenly. This means that some parts of the food may reach very high temperatures, while others remain relatively cool. In those overheated sections, chemical reactions can intensify, leading to the formation of harmful compounds. Meanwhile, the cooler sections may not be hot enough to eliminate bacteria that developed during storage. So, in one plate of food, you may be dealing with both chemical and microbial risks at the same time. And let us talk about time and storage, because reheating does not exist in isolation. It is part of a chain. How long the food sat before refrigeration, how it was stored, how many times it has already been reheated. These factors all play a role. Each step increases the likelihood that the food's composition has changed in ways that are no longer beneficial to your health. I want you to understand something very clearly. Your body is remarkably resilient, but it is not invincible. Every day, it works hard to neutralize toxins, repair cells, and maintain balance. When you consistently introduce substances that are difficult to process, substances created through repeated heating, you are adding to that burden. Over time, this can weaken your body's natural defenses. Some of these compounds have been associated with cellular damage. Others may interfere with normal metabolic processes. And while one reheated meal will not define your health, a habit formed over years can have consequences that are far more serious than most people realize. This is not about creating fear. It is about creating awareness. Because once you understand that heat is not just a tool for cooking, but also a force that changes the very nature of your food, you begin to make different choices. You begin to respect the limits of what your food can safely undergo. So the next time you reach for that leftover meal, I want you to pause for just a moment and ask yourself a simple question. How many times has this already been exposed to heat, and what might it have become in the process? That small moment of awareness could be the difference between nourishing your body and unknowingly placing it under stress. Because not all heat is harmless, and not all food remains safe the second time around. Now let us move a little deeper, because not all foods respond to heat in the same way. Some are far more delicate than they appear, and among the most sensitive are the foods we often trust the most. Those rich in protein. Chicken, eggs, mushrooms. These are foods people associate with strength, nourishment, recovery, and rightly so, when they are fresh and properly prepared. But what many do not realize is that these same foods can become problematic when they are reheated. Protein is not just a nutrient. It is a complex structure made up of tightly folded chains of amino acids. When you cook protein for the first time, heat gently unfolds these structures in a controlled way. This process, known as denaturation, is what makes food easier to digest. It is what allows your body to access and use those amino acids effectively. But when you take that same protein, cool it down, store it, and then apply heat again, you are not simply repeating the same process. You are compounding it. The second exposure to heat does not just unfold the protein. It can distort it further, sometimes beyond recognition. The structure becomes more rigid, less digestible, and in some cases, it begins to form new compounds that the body struggles to process. This is where the problem begins, because now, instead of nourishing your system, that protein may start to work against it. Think about reheated chicken, for example. When it is freshly cooked, it provides essential nutrients that support muscle repair and overall health. But when reheated, especially at high temperatures or for extended periods, its protein composition can change in ways that make digestion more difficult. Some people experience discomfort without realizing the source: bloating, heaviness, a sense that the meal did not sit well. These are not random reactions, they are signals. Eggs are even more sensitive. They are among the most protein-dense foods we consume, but they are also highly reactive to heat. Reheating eggs, particularly in a microwave or at high temperatures, can cause the proteins to break down in a way that produces compounds that are not only unpleasant in taste and smell, but also potentially irritating to the digestive system. It is not uncommon for reheated eggs to develop a sulfur-like odor. That is chemistry at work, and it is not always a sign of something your body welcomes. Mushrooms present a slightly different concern. While they are often grouped with vegetables, their protein content and structure make them unique. When mushrooms are reheated, especially after being stored for some time, their proteins can degrade and interact with other compounds present in the food. This can lead to the formation of substances that are harder for the body to break down, placing additional strain on digestion. Now, I want you to understand something important. The issue here is not toxicity in the immediate, dramatic sense. You are not likely to fall ill after a single reheated meal of chicken or eggs. The real concern lies in repetition. It lies in habit. When these altered proteins are consumed regularly, day after day, week after week, your digestive system is forced to work harder than it should. Your body must expend more energy to process food that was once easy to handle. Over time, this can lead to inefficiencies, subtle at first, but meaningful in the long run. There is also the matter of byproducts formed during repeated heating. Certain protein-rich foods, when exposed to high temperatures multiple times, can produce compounds associated with oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is not something you feel immediately, but it is something your cells experience. It is a state where harmful molecules begin to outweigh your body's ability to neutralize them. And when that balance is disturbed consistently, it can contribute to cellular damage. Your body is designed to recognize and utilize nutrients in their optimal form. When food is altered beyond that optimal state, it creates confusion at a biochemical level. Enzymes may not interact with the food in the same way. Absorption may be less efficient, and what should have been a source of strength becomes at best a burden and at worst a contributor to long-term health concerns. I often tell people that the quality of what you eat is not only about ingredients, it is about condition. A fresh meal and a reheated version of that same meal are not identical in the way your body experiences them. They may look similar, they may smell acceptable, but internally they can be very different. So when it comes to protein-rich foods, the question is not just, is this still edible? But rather, is this still beneficial? Because there is a difference. Something can be safe enough to eat and yet no longer serve your body in the way it was meant to. And this is where mindful eating becomes important. Preparing smaller portions, consuming protein-rich meals fresh, and avoiding repeated reheating are simple choices, but they carry significant weight over time. They reduce the burden on your digestive system and allow your body to function as it was designed to. You do not need to eliminate these foods. In fact, they are essential, but you must respect their sensitivity. You must understand that not all nutrients are stable under repeated stress, and protein is one of the most vulnerable. Because when you repeatedly expose delicate proteins to heat, you are not just changing your food, you are changing the way your body must respond to it. Now let me draw your attention to something that often surprises people because it involves foods we have always been told are among the healthiest you can eat. I am talking about vegetables, particularly those rich in natural nitrates, such as spinach, celery, and beets. These are foods that are widely praised, and rightly so. In their fresh, properly prepared state, they support circulation, provide essential nutrients, and contribute to overall wellness. But what happens when these same vegetables are cooked, stored, and then reheated is something many people never stop to consider. You see, nitrates in vegetables are not harmful on their own. In fact, in fresh vegetables, they can play a beneficial role in the body, even supporting cardiovascular health. The issue begins when these nitrates are exposed to certain conditions, heat, time, and sometimes improper storage. Under these circumstances, they can be converted into nitrites, and from there, potentially into compounds that are far less friendly to your system. This transformation does not happen in a dramatic, visible way. There is no sudden change in color that warns you. No strong smell that signals danger. The food may look perfectly fine. It may even taste the same, but chemically, something very different may be taking place beneath the surface. When nitrate-rich vegetables are cooked for the first time, most of their beneficial properties remain intact if the process is done properly. But once they are left to cool and sit, especially for extended periods, the environment becomes suitable for certain reactions to occur. Bacteria, even in small amounts, can begin to interact with the nitrates present in the vegetables, contributing to their conversion into nitrites. Then, when you reheat that food, particularly at high temperatures, you can accelerate further reactions that lead to the formation of compounds known to be potentially harmful over time. Now, I want to be precise here. The concern is not about occasional consumption. The body can handle small exposures. The concern is about patterns, about habits that repeat themselves daily without awareness. Because when you consistently consume reheated nitrate-rich vegetables, you may be increasing your exposure to compounds that over time have been associated with cellular stress, and in some cases, an elevated risk of serious health conditions. Let us take spinach as an example. Freshly cooked spinach is a nutrient powerhouse. It provides iron, vitamins, and beneficial plant compounds. But when it is reheated after being stored, especially if it was not cooled or refrigerated properly, the nitrate content can shift toward nitrites. And when nitrites are exposed to high heat again, they may contribute to the formation of compounds that are not ideal for long-term health. The same principle applies to celery and beets. These are not bad foods, far from it, but they are sensitive to how they are handled after cooking. What makes this particularly concerning is how common the practice is. People prepare large batches of vegetable dishes, store them, and reheat them multiple times over the course of a few days. It feels efficient, it feels practical, but with nitrate-rich vegetables, this cycle of cooling and reheating creates repeated opportunities for these chemical changes to occur. And again, just like with the other risks we have discussed, this is not something you will feel immediately. There is no instant discomfort that clearly points to the cause. The body does not send a direct message saying, "This vegetable has been reheated too many times." Instead, the impact is subtle. It accumulates quietly, interacting with your system at a level you cannot see. Your body is constantly working to maintain balance. It processes nutrients, neutralizes unwanted substances, and repairs itself continuously. But when it is repeatedly exposed to compounds that place it under stress, even in small amounts, that balance can begin to shift. Over time, this can contribute to a state where the body's natural defenses are no longer as effective as they should be. I want you to understand that the goal here is not to create fear around vegetables. That would be the wrong message entirely. These foods are essential. They should remain a central part of your diet. But how you handle them after cooking matters just as much as choosing to eat them in the first place. Fresh preparation is always the safest approach. If you must store them, keeping the duration short and avoiding repeated reheating can significantly reduce the risk. It is about respecting the nature of the food, understanding that not all nutrients remain stable once they have been subjected to multiple cycles of heat and time. Because when you take something that is naturally beneficial and unknowingly alter it through repeated reheating, you are changing its role in your body. What was meant to support your health may begin to work against it in ways that are not immediately obvious. And that is the quiet danger when something you trust, something you believe is helping you, slowly becomes something your body has to defend itself against. Because even the healthiest foods can lose their safety when they are no longer treated with care. Now let us come to a category of food that is so common, so familiar, that most people never imagine it could pose any real concern. Rice and potatoes, simple, affordable, and found in kitchens all over the world. These are foods people prepare in large quantities, store easily, and reheat without a second thought. But what I need you to understand is that the risk here is not just about heat changing the food. It is about what can happen before that reheating even begins. When foods like rice and potatoes are cooked, they do not become immune to microbial activity. In fact, once they begin to cool, they can enter what we call a danger zone, where certain types of bacteria are able to grow if the conditions are right. One of the most concerning aspects is that some of these bacteria are capable of producing toxins, substances that are not easily destroyed, even when the food is reheated. Let me explain this in a way that is very clear. You cook rice, perhaps for lunch or dinner. It sits out for a while before being refrigerated, or maybe it is not cooled quickly enough. During that time, bacteria that were either present in small amounts or introduced from the environment can begin to multiply. As they grow, they can produce toxins. Now, later on, you take that rice and you reheat it. It becomes hot again, it smells fine, it looks perfectly edible. But the toxins that were produced earlier may still be there, unaffected by the heat you just applied. This is where the misunderstanding lies. Many people believe that reheating food makes it safe again. And while heat can kill many types of bacteria, it does not always eliminate the toxins those bacteria have already produced. So you may be eating something that appears safe on the surface, but carries a hidden risk that your senses cannot detect. Potatoes follow a similar pattern. After cooking, if they are left at room temperature for too long or stored improperly, they can become a breeding ground for microorganisms. When wrapped or stored in ways that limit airflow, certain conditions may even encourage the growth of bacteria that thrive in low-oxygen environments. And again, reheating does not necessarily reverse what has already taken place. What makes this particularly important is how routine these habits are. People cook rice in bulk to save time. They prepare potatoes in advance for convenience. These are practical decisions, and in many ways, they make sense. But without proper handling, without attention to how long the food sits, how it is stored, and how often it is reheated, these everyday practices can introduce risks that are completely avoidable. I want to emphasize something here. The danger is not always immediate or dramatic. In some cases, consuming contaminated food can lead to acute symptoms: nausea, stomach discomfort, digestive upset. But in other cases, the exposure may be milder, less noticeable, and repeated over time. And when your body is repeatedly exposed to low levels of harmful substances, it can create a cumulative effect. Your system is constantly working to neutralize what it does not need, and over time, that constant demand can take a toll. There is also the issue of repeated reheating. Each time rice or potatoes are cooled and reheated again, you are not only giving bacteria more opportunities to grow if the handling is not perfect, but you are also continuing the cycle of degradation we discussed earlier. The texture changes, the nutritional quality may decline, and the overall integrity of the food becomes compromised. And let us be honest, most people do not track how many times a particular dish has been reheated. Food moves in and out of the refrigerator. Portions are taken, returned, warmed again. It becomes very easy to lose track. What started as a fresh, safe meal gradually becomes something that has gone through multiple cycles of temperature change, each one increasing the uncertainty of what is actually happening within that food. This is why awareness is so important. Not fear, not panic, but awareness. Understanding that safety is not just about cooking food thoroughly the first time. It is about the entire journey of that food, from the moment it is prepared to the moment it is consumed. Simple practices can make a significant difference. Cooling food promptly after cooking, storing it at the right temperature, avoiding leaving it out for extended periods, and limiting reheating to just once when possible. These are not complicated steps, but they are powerful. They reduce the opportunity for bacteria to grow and for toxins to form. Because the truth is, your body depends on you to make these decisions. It does not have a way to see whether a toxin is present before you eat. It reacts after the fact. It deals with what you give it. And while it is capable of handling a great deal, it is not designed to repeatedly fight off preventable risks introduced through simple habits. So when you look at that bowl of rice or that serving of potatoes, I want you to see more than just food. I want you to see the process it has gone through. The time, the temperature, the handling. I want you to recognize that safety is not guaranteed by appearance alone, because sometimes the most ordinary foods carry the risks we pay the least attention to. And that is where the real danger begins, when familiarity replaces caution.